Welcome to Inner Rise. When you touch a divine assignment, don't be surprised when your life turns into a horror film directed by heaven. Let's get one thing straight. God doesn't play about his chosen ones. You might forget what they did to you, but the universe screenshots everything. And while you were busy healing in private, guess what? Judgment was busy scheduling an appointment with their pride. Here's a wild fact. Studies show that the brain registers emotional pain the same way it processes physical injury. But what they didn't know is that spiritual betrayal hits even harder. You weren't just wounded emotionally, you were targeted energetically. And now the bill is due with interest, divine penalties, and a cosmic slap or two. You see, they thought you were a phase, a pushover, a temporary nobody. But you were the test they couldn't cheat on. You were the calm before the divine storm. And now that storm. Oh, it's category 7, honey. And it's wearing your name on its clouds. And here's the part that's kind of funny. They thought they got away with it. They high-fived each other after discarding you like trash, not realizing God is the best recycling artist in the multiverse. And now you're the priceless gold they wish they hadn't thrown away. So sit back, grab your spiritual popcorn, and let's talk about why the same people who tried to drown you are now gasping for air while crying rivers you were never meant to swim in. Because when it's payback time for a chosen one, heaven doesn't just whisper, it roars. Let's get into it. Number 1. They mocked your suffering. Now their nightmares speak in your voice. They mocked your pain like it was entertainment. Laughed behind closed doors. Passed around your private struggles like gossip appetizers at their pity party. They didn't just hurt you, they enjoyed it. The truth is, they never saw your suffering as real because, in their eyes, you were just an emotional punching bag, not a person. Every time you broke down, they took it as confirmation that you were weak, dramatic, or even deserving of what you were going through. But what they didn't realize was that your pain had a witness, and it wasn't them. It was God. And he didn't just observe it, he measured it. Now they can't sleep. They're not posting like they used to. They're not as loud anymore. Why? Because that same pain they joked about has turned into something they can't outrun. They thought they walked away free. But their minds are haunted. Every insult, every betrayal, every fake smile is echoing back at them in the form of anxiety, paranoia, depression, and chaos. The joke they thought was so clever. It's now the voice in their head at 3 a.m. And that voice sounds a lot like you. Calm, unbothered, and no longer begging to be understood. People love to act strong when you're at your lowest. They assume their cruelty will never cost them anything. But spiritual law doesn't skip anybody. The same energy they projected onto you is now suffocating them from the inside out. They're starting to realize that while they were tearing you down, they were planting seeds of their own downfall. Now those seeds have grown into vines wrapped around their peace. The worst part, they can't even talk about it because explaining why they feel tormented would mean admitting they hurt someone who never did anything but try to survive. So instead, they suffer silently, hoping no one connects the dots. But the universe already has. You didn't seek revenge. You were the revenge, your healing, your glow up, your peace. It's louder than any comeback. And while you rest, they're spiraling. Because the moment they mocked your suffering, they cursed themselves with it. Not in theory. In real life, every tear you cried became a haunting they can't shake. Now they're learning the hard way. You don't play God with people's pain and walk away whole. Number 2, God didn't forget he stored every injustice like ammunition. They really thought nothing was happening while they were doing you dirty. Thought it was just another day, another stab, another lie, another moment of using you like you had no soul. You sat there quiet trying to figure out what you did wrong, not realizing God was already building the case. Every word they threw at you, every time they tried to break your spirit, it didn't vanish into thin air, it went somewhere. Heaven was collecting it like receipts, like ammunition, like legal evidence in a divine courtroom. They thought they got away with it because lightning didn't strike immediately. That's the mistake people make when they mess with someone covered by God. They confuse silence for absence. But heaven doesn't move on their clock. It moves with precision. While you were crying yourself to sleep, God was counting. While they were out spreading lies and dragging your name, God was taking notes. They thought the lack of immediate consequence meant they were untouchable. What it really meant was God was letting the rope get long enough for their own downfall to be public, personal, and permanent. Now things are falling apart around them, and they swear it's random. But there's nothing random about a spiritual invoice coming due. You may not have seen it, but God stored everything. Every manipulation, every betrayal, every time they pretended to love you just to get access, and now He's returning it with precision. Not just for revenge, but to show that you can't violate what's sacred and expect blessings to flow. The worst part is they know something's wrong, but they can't trace the origin. They can't tell people what's happening because they'd have to admit what they did to you. Their health is acting up. Their relationships are crumbling. Peace is nowhere to be found. And all of it links back to the moment they thought they could play God in your life without consequences. God let it build. Not because He forgot you, but because He's thorough. His justice isn't just punishment. It's surgical. It's clean. It's loud without you saying a word. And now they're living proof that God may be slow to anger, but when He moves, He doesn't miss. Number 3, their high was built on your pain, so their crash will be biblical. They built their confidence off your pain. Every time you fell, it gave them a boost. They felt powerful watching you struggle, like your suffering made them superior. Some even wore your downfall like a trophy, telling half-truths, laughing about your lowest moments, using your name as a warning or a joke. But what they never understood was this: you can't build your high off someone else's low and expect that house to stand. That's not elevation. That's spiritual theft. And stolen power always has an expiration date. They thought you were their stepping stone, but you were actually the test. And now that they've made it, everything is falling apart from the inside. Not because you cursed them, not because you wished bad on them, but because what they built was never clean. Their so-called wins were born from your wounds. Their spotlight came from pushing you into the shadows. And that kind of success, it doesn't last. It decays, it rots from the core and collapses in slow motion for everyone to see. Now the crash has started and they don't even know where it's coming from. The relationships they bragged about are crumbling. Their image is cracking, their mind is tired. There's no joy in the things they once bragged about. And deep down, they're starting to realize something they never wanted to face. It's payback. Not from you, but from the very universe they disrespected when they used someone chosen as a joke. It's not just that things are going wrong. It's how specific the losses are. The same way they took pleasure in your brokenness. Life is now mirroring that energy back at them. Only this time, there's no one left to blame. No one to scapegoat. Just them sitting in a life built on stolen peace, fake power, and spiritual debt they never thought they'd have to repay. You didn't rise just to shine. You rose to expose what was fake. And your glow is making their darkness obvious. Their crash will be biblical, not because you prayed for revenge, but because God doesn't let anyone build castles from another person's ashes and walk away blessed. Number 4, your forgiveness protected them, but your silence was their final test. They thought you were a fool because you didn't retaliate. You had every reason to expose them, drag their names, tell your side, but you didn't. Not because you were weak, not because you didn't have proof, but because something in you, maybe the God in you, chose mercy over destruction. And that mercy gave them time. Time to repent, time to change, time to make it right. But instead of seeing your silence as grace, they saw it as an opportunity to dig deeper into betrayal. They didn't just keep the lie going. They doubled down on it, thinking you had no fight left in you. That's where they got it wrong. Your silence wasn't surrender. It was strategy. It was a holy pause, a divine gap between offense and consequence. You were hoping they'd see the light, hoping they'd realize the damage and course correct before the spiritual rope ran out. But they didn't. They kept playing, kept pretending, kept pushing boundaries, thinking nothing would come of it. And now that silence has expired. And with it, so has their shield. The protection they had while you were quiet is gone. The peace they enjoyed while you kept their secrets has lifted. The covering your prayers gave them has been removed. What they don't realize they mocked is now a silent judge in their conscience. No courtroom needed, no audience required, just their own guilt turning into restlessness. Their peace has cracks in it. Their joy has an expiration date. And it all ties back to how they handled you. This is what happens when people are cruel without accountability. They don't walk away free, they walk away spiritually infected. The shame lives rentre. The guilt drips in slowly. And by the time they realize they should have cherished you, they can't even say your name without choking on the memory of how badly they fumbled. Someone chosen by God. Number 6, you were the test and they failed loudly. You weren't just some random person passing through their life. You were the exam they didn't know they were sitting for. God placed you in their path as a mirror, a light, a divine checkpoint. Not for you to prove anything, but for them to reveal who they really were when confronted with purity, truth, and vulnerability. And instead of honoring that, they mocked it. Instead of respecting the light you carried, they tried to dim it. Not by accident, but on purpose. They failed the test loudly and proudly. They treated you like you were disposable, like your kindness made you weak, like your compassion made you gullible. They confused your empathy for naivety. And while you were offering real love, understanding, and loyalty, they were seeing how far they could go without consequence. That's where the failure happened. It wasn't just that they hurt you, it was how they did it with arrogance, with entitlement, with the full belief that they'd never be held accountable for it. What they didn't realize was that every decision they made towards you was being recorded in the Spirit. God wasn't looking at their image, their reputation, their social mask. He was watching how they treated someone he sent as a gift. You were the blessing in disguise, the lifeline in human form. And instead of receiving you with gratitude, they slammed the door and laughed about it. So now the same door they closed in your face is closed to them. Only this time, it's not your hand on the handle. It's God's. The lesson they refused to learn privately is now becoming their public classroom. Life is teaching them through losses, through betrayals of their own, through breakdowns that can't be fixed with fake apologies. What could have been a season of elevation is now a cycle of regret. And every time they look back, they'll realize you were the pivot point. You were the opportunity to evolve, to choose growth, to receive divine favor through honoring the one sent to test their heart. But they failed. And not quietly. They made a scene out of your suffering. They let pride lead. So now the correction is just as loud, just as visible, and 10 times as painful. Because when you fail a divine test with mockery, the retake comes with a price you can't ignore. Number 7, they opened portals of misfortune when they attacked you. When they came against you, they weren't just starting drama. They were triggering spiritual consequences they couldn't even comprehend. Because when someone is chosen, touching them isn't just an offense. It's a breach, a violation of divine order. You carry a spiritual covering that isn't visible to the eye, but very real in the spirit. It's not just protection, it's territory, holy ground. And when they decided to mock, curse, or slander you, they stepped into sacred space without permission. And that's where they messed up. Every time they lied on your name, they weren't hurting your reputation. They were stripping themselves of spiritual covering. Every insult they threw wasn't just cruel, it was a brick knocked loose from their own foundation. They thought they were winning. They thought they were being clever. But what they were actually doing was opening portals of misfortune into their own lives. Not because you hexed them, not because you clapped back, but because your spirit is wired to return energy with divine accuracy. And when you're chosen, that return doesn't miss. Now their life is showing cracks in places they thought were solid. Peace is drying up. Finances leaking, health declining, relationships getting shaky. And they're confused because on the surface, none of it connects to you. But in the spirit, it's all linked. They laid traps for you that ended up collapsing under their own feet. They gossiped and schemed, not knowing each word spoken against you acted like a spiritual hammer hitting their own house. And now that house is crumbling not by sabotage, but by the laws of energy and divine justice. What they fail to realize is that chosen people walk with unseen armies. The atmosphere around you is guarded. So when they attacked you, they weren't just attacking a person. They were trespassing into a dimension they weren't authorized to enter. And there's always a price for that. No spell, no charm, no apology can undo the damage once at Iya. Sacred boundary is crossed, but you didn't fight back, but heaven did. And now they're sitting in chaos they built for someone else. They didn't realize they were dismantling their own future brick by brick while trying to destroy yours. And the worst part, there's no door out of the mess they created. Because you can't attack a chosen one and walk away untouched. Not in this lifetime. Not in any. Number 8, the pain they caused you was meant to kill. But you became a weapon. They weren't just careless, they were intentional. They knew what they were doing when they broke you. Every jab, every rejection, every betrayal was crafted to make sure you never got back up. It wasn't an accident. They wanted to destroy your spirit. They didn't just want you hurt. They wanted you erased. To them, your silence, your downfall, your disappearance would have been the ultimate win. And for a while, it looked like they got what they wanted. You were down, isolated, doubting your worth, fighting invisible battles while they celebrated your collapse like it was a victory party. But what they didn't know is that you were never dying. You were transforming. The pain they caused didn't break you. It refined you. It taught you how to see through lies, how to recognize energy before words, how to stand alone and still be whole. They meant to paralyze you, but all they did was force you into your own power. And not just any power, but the kind that only comes after surviving hell with your soul intact. Now you walk differently, talk differently. You're not soft in the way they remember. You're not begging for acceptance. You're not trying to be understood. You're sharper, more spiritually alert, and unshakably grounded. You've become a weapon, not of revenge, but of truth. Your presence alone convicts them. Your peace exposes their chaos. Your joy humiliates their intentions. That's why they flinch when you show up. That's why their confidence cracks when your name comes up. Because your healing is a judgment they never expected. They tried to bury you, but what they buried wasn't a weakness. It was a seed. And now the very pain they used to silence you has made you unstoppable. You're not who you used to be. You're not interested in revenge, but your existence alone is a rebuke. You are a living reminder that their best shot wasn't good enough to destroy someone anointed. The weapon they tried to form against you, it didn't just fail, it backfired. You've become everything they feared you'd never be. Free, fearless, and fireproof. And the look in their eyes when they see you now says it all. They know you made it out of the war they started, and you came back armed with power they'll never understand. Number 9, they tried to rewrite your story. Now God is erasing theirs. They thought they were clever, twisting your truth. Rewriting your story, taking the pen like they were the author of your identity. They spread lies about you with confidence, painting you as the villain so they could play the victim. To the people around them, they told half-truths coded in performance. They left out their own betrayal, their own manipulation, their own cruelty, and made sure everyone saw you through the filter of their insecurities. It wasn't just gossip. It was a full-blown campaign to erase who you really were and replace it with who they needed you to be to feel superior. And for a while, it worked. People turned on you. They looked at you differently. You were left confused, isolated, maybe even questioning your own worth. That's the power of manipulation. It doesn't need to be true to be effective. Just repeat it enough. But the one thing they didn't account for was that you weren't writing your story alone. God was the co-author, and heaven doesn't tolerate unauthorized edits. So now the same lies they crafted are circling back not to hurt you, but to reveal them. Their own words are catching up with them. Their own performances are cracking under pressure. The same mouths that used to speak against you are now fumbling with guilt and fear, because truth has a way of surviving even the dirtiest revisions. And God is not just exposing what they did. He's erasing the version of reality they tried to build with your pain. The twist The same manipulation they used to ruin your name is becoming the evidence that ruins theirs. Every false narrative, every fake conversation, every word meant to destroy your character is now a weapon backfiring with precision. They didn't just rewrite your story, they rewrote their own ending, and God is editing with divine red ink. Now, when people hear your name, they hear something different. They're starting to see the truth. The lies are unraveling, the masks are slipping. You didn't have to defend yourself. God let them talk just long enough to bury themselves in their own falsehoods. They thought they were in control, but when you try to erase a chosen one's truth, all you're really doing is triggering a divine correction you can't stop. And the story they tried to control, it's now slipping through their fingers, page by painful page. Number 10, you didn't clap back. Now the universe is clapping back for you. You didn't curse them. You didn't scheme. You didn't try to get even. You took your pain, swallowed your pride, and chose healing. You chose silence not because you didn't have words, but because you knew your peace was more valuable than a petty revenge. And while you were in the dark trying to find your footing again, they kept going, kept mocking, gossiping, and painting you out to be the villain in rooms you weren't even in. They thought your silence meant defeat. What they didn't realize is that the most dangerous response from a chosen one is no response at all. Because energy doesn't lie and energy doesn't forget. While you were rebuilding your soul, they were racking up spiritual debt. While you were learning how to breathe again after the damage they caused, they were sowing seeds of chaos into their own future. Now those seeds have matured in its harvest season. Only what's growing is in abundance, it's loss, broken relationships, financial instability, chronic anxiety, restlessness that sleep won't cure, illness that medicine can't fully explain. Not because you wished it, but because universal law doesn't need your permission to balance what was thrown off. They're starting to notice it too. Nothing's flowing like it used to. The favor they once walked in feels distant. The applause has stopped. The fake joy is harder to maintain. And the peace they thought they'd always have, it's gone. Not because of you, but because when you harm someone who carries divine energy, you don't just offend them, you offend the source that sent them. The universe isn't cruel, it's calculated. It doesn't act on feelings, it responds to alignment. And the scales they tipped so arrogantly are now swinging back with force. What they thought they did to you in secret is now showing up in their public life in ways they can't control. You didn't have to lift a finger. You didn't need to post cryptic quotes or get revenge through petty means. You simply healed. And in doing so, you let the natural order of things do what it was designed to do. Correct, expose, and restore. That's not karma, that's justice. That's the sound of the universe clapping back louder than you ever needed to. Number 11. The same circle that enabled their abuse is now watching them drown. When they attacked you, they weren't alone. They had a whole audience behind them. Co-signers, cheerleaders, enablers, and gossip junkies who got high off your humiliation. They whispered behind your back, laughed at your breakdowns, and acted like your pain was entertainment. These people didn't just watch, they helped. They spread rumors they knew were lies, chose sides without hearing the truth, and pretended their hands were clean while they added fuel to the fire. They made it a group project to ruin your name. And back then, it looked like they were winning. The smear campaigns, the fake tears, the triangulation, it worked. People turned their backs on you. You were left looking crazy, dramatic, unstable. But what they didn't realize is that truth has a longer lifespan than lies. And while they were feeding off short-term chaos, God was setting up a long-term reveal. Now, the same circle that hyped them up is nowhere to be found. The group chats are dry. The phone calls have stopped. The loyal friends who egged on their cruelty are slowly backing away because nothing exposes a liar faster than watching their life fall apart. And that's exactly what's happening. The show they put on is collapsing and nobody wants to be seen in the audience anymore. The very people who clap for their performance are now pretending they were never in the room. You're not the villain, you never were. But they worked overtime to convince others you were just to keep their hands clean. Now the same crowd is looking at them with confusion, seeing the cracks, recognizing the pattern, and finally waking up to the truth. They lied, they manipulated, they abused, and they did it with arrogance. The silence from their support system is loud. It's not just that people are quiet. It's that they're watching karma unfold, watching justice roll in, and none of them are stepping in to help. Because even the enablers are starting to realize defending someone who attacks a chosen one is signing up for their curse, too. Now they're drowning in the very storm they created, and the lifeboats they thought would be, they're gone. Because when your entire identity is built on destroying someone else's, you don't just lose the person, you lose the crowd too. No one wants to go down with a ship that was built on lies. Number 12. You were their mirror and they smashed it out of fear. You didn't even have to say much. Just being in their life was enough to make them uncomfortable. You weren't rude. You weren't threatening. You were just real. Too real. And that was the problem. You didn't reflect who they pretended to be. You reflected who they truly were. And deep down, they couldn't handle what your presence revealed about them. You didn't judge them, but being around you made them feel exposed. While you were being honest, they were performing. While you were healing, they were hiding. And every time you stood in your truth, it lit up the places in them they spent years avoiding. They couldn't understand why you triggered them so deeply, why your light made them so angry, why your calm felt like a threat. But it's because you were their mirror, and mirrors don't lie. You showed them their insecurities, their manipulation, their wounds, their jealousy, and they couldn't face it. So instead of growing, they chose destruction. They tried to tear you down, thinking that if they removed the mirror, they could escape the reflection. But it doesn't work like that. Breaking the mirror doesn't erase what's being shown. It just distorts it. And now they're left with scattered pieces of themselves that they can't put back together. They're confused, restless, haunted by emotions they don't understand. They're fighting shadows, burning bridges, sabotaging blessings, and blaming everyone but themselves. But the truth is, they're battling the parts of themselves you quietly exposed. Their fear, their guilt, their false image, it's all unraveling. And there's no one left to project it onto. They thought that getting rid of you would bring them peace. But all it did was remove the one person who was showing them where healing was needed. They smashed the mirror, and now they're surrounded by fragments of regret. Regret for how they treated you. Regret for not listening. Regret for not facing their truth when they had the chance. And the scariest part for them, they still see your reflection everywhere. In the people they meet, in the silence of their own thoughts, in the mistakes they can't stop repeating because you weren't just a person. They were being given a chance to evolve through you, and they threw it away out of fear. Now they're left fighting ghosts that look a lot like who they could have been if only they hadn't been so afraid of the mirror. Number 13. They wanted you broken forever, but God made you untouchable. They didn't just want to hurt you, they wanted you stuck there. They were hoping you'd never recover, that you'd never smile again without bitterness behind it, that you'd stay small, insecure, traumatized, and too wounded to ever be taken seriously. That was the plan. Not just to break you, but to keep you broken. Because your weakness made them feel powerful. Your silence gave them the illusion of control, and your pain became their comfort zone. But then something they didn't expect happened. You healed. You rose up, not loud and messy, but quiet and steady. And that quiet rise, that's what messed with them the most. No announcement, no public revenge, no need for approval, just strength. Real, unshakable, God-given strength. And suddenly the version of you they tried to destroy was gone. The wounded version they could manipulate, dead. In its place was someone they couldn't touch, couldn't read, couldn't shake. That's when they realized they didn't just lose access, they lost power. Your healing offended them, not because they cared, but because it exposed how powerless they truly were. You rising meant their plans failed. Your glow-up was evidence of a covering they never factored in. You were never meant to stay beneath their boot. And now that you're out from under it, they're scrambling. Because no matter how many times they tried to break you, it didn't stick. You didn't shatter, you evolved, you didn't retaliate, you elevated. And that kind of comeback isn't man made. That's God. They can't even hate you properly anymore because everything they throw at you bounces back with divine immunity. The doors they swore would stay closed for you, God opened them. The reputation they tried to destroy, God restored it better. The peace they swore you'd never have again. You're living in it publicly and unapologetically. And what hurts them most is they can't stop it. They fought something too holy to defeat. You were never theirs to break. You were never theirs to define. You're a divine assignment. And that makes you untouchable. Not because you're perfect, but because you're protected. And now they're sitting in the wreckage of a war they started with someone heaven refuses to lose. Number 14. Your rise isn't just victory, it's their sentencing. Your rise was never just about vindication, it was divine strategy. God didn't just pick you up because he felt sorry for you. He raised you up because your story needed to speak louder than your pain ever could. Every time you level up, it's not just a personal win. It's a spiritual statement, a testimony, a verdict. Your elevation is the courtroom where everything they did to you is being replayed. Only now. It's not through your tears, but through your triumph. They thought discarding you would bury you, that your name would fade, your voice would weaken, and your light would die out. They were banking on your silence being permanent, your isolation being final. But heaven had other plans, and those plans included putting you in a position where they couldn't avoid seeing you thrive. Now, every step forward you take is another reminder of what they mishandled. Every smile you wear is a mirror to their cruelty. Every door that opens for you is another confirmation. They lost something sacred, and they'll never get it back. Your rise is haunting them, not because you're spiteful, but because it proves they were wrong. Wrong about your worth, wrong about your destiny, wrong about thinking they could write your ending. Now they have to sit in the silence of what could have been, watching you become everything they mocked you for believing in. That's not just a glow-up, that's judgment. God turned your healing into their sentence, your success into their shame. And here's the twist. You're not even looking back at them. You're not trying to prove anything anymore. That stings even more because you're not chasing revenge. You're walking in purpose. You're not trying to make a scene. You're just showing up whole. And in that quiet, confident presence, they're being forced to watch you shine in a light they tried to snuff out. This isn't about revenge. This is about God making sure justice is seen. He didn't just bring you out, he brought you up publicly, powerfully, so they'd know exactly who they were dealing with. You weren't just the lesson, you were the revelation. And now your rise is the sentence they can't escape. No appeal, no reset. Just the consequences of underestimating someone God was always going to restore. They thought they'd buried you, but they were just planting a seed they could never uproot. What they meant for destruction became the soil for your divine elevation. And now every part of your comeback is echoing through their lives, not as noise, but as judgment. The peace you walk in today is not just healing, it's evidence. The favor you carry is not luck, it's justice. Your rise was never random. It was orchestrated, strategic, sacred. You never had to expose them because your glow did. You never had to fight back because heaven did. And the very silence they mocked, that was the space where God was writing the most powerful plot twist of your life. Now, you don't have to say a word. Your life says it all. Your peace is preaching. Your blessings are testifying. Your presence is enough to shake what used to overlook you. What's happening now isn't revenge. It's reversal. Divine reversal. The kind that can't be stopped, blocked, or undone. The same people who laughed at your pain are watching your elevation with mouths they can't close and hearts they can't quiet. They're being judged not with fire, but with the one thing that exposes every hidden motive. Your light. And that light, it's too holy to dim, too divine to deny, and too powerful to ignore. So, stand tall, chosen one. Walk in what's yours. not arrogantly, but boldly, not for applause, but as proof. You were never their victim. You were always God's vessel. And now the whole world is watching the one thing they never saw coming. You restored, unstoppable, and untouchable. If this message shook something deep in you, don't just keep it to yourself. Let it echo. Tap that like button so others know this truth is powerful. Drop a comment below and let us know which part hit the hardest. Your testimony might be the confirmation someone else needs. Share this with a fellow chosen one who's been through the fire and needs to know their glow up is divine justice in motion. And if you haven't already, subscribe to the channel and hit the notification bell so you never miss another life-changing word. This isn't just a channel, it's a spiritual movement. And if you're part of the chosen, you already know we don't follow trends. We follow purpose. Let's rise together. God bless you.